Alfred was 34 years old when he graduated from law school, stating, "It was a real struggle for me to get through law school. Even so, he never gave up." Here is a photo of his law degree. And his class photo. His timing was nonetheless perfect with respect to graduating from law school. He explained, and there he is in the middle of the page there, that had he graduated before 1961, he could not be called to the bar because he said Aboriginal peoples in Canada were not citizens at that time. Alfred was the first Aboriginal person ever to graduate from UBC Law and to be called to the BC Bar. The head of the Indian Affairs Department for BC also attended his graduation. Here we see his Law Society certificate. And I should say that I've been speaking with Alfred and Joan about some of these historical documents, and we've been discussing possibly archiving these documents at some institution, whether it's a law society, whether it's this building, whether it's the law school, what have you. If anyone would like to talk about that a little bit more, I'd appreciate hearing from you. I do believe that these documents are valuable contributing documents to the growth of Aboriginal people in our field, and if we can do anything to preserve them and make them available to the public, we ought to work towards doing that. On the day of his call ceremony, he's seen here with his parents and 3 of his sisters, Irene, Winnie, and Joyce, on the steps of the courthouse in Vancouver. Alfred recalled that for a long time it really didn't strike him as significant that he was the first called to the bar because graduation was significant enough for him. Alfred began work in private practice in 1962 and married English-born Joan Heaton Peterson in 1964. This is a photo of them, newly married, waltzing down the street in New Westminster. Both Alfred and Joan shared great stories about the period just before they were married, and I'm going to share those with you now. Alfred, as he explains it, prior to him marrying Joan, his father had been approached by a large contingent of women from their village. The speaker, on behalf of the women, exclaimed to his father, William, a hereditary chief, "We heard that Alfred is to marry, but his wife is not the daughter of a hereditary chief. The son of a hereditary chief is supposed to marry the daughter of a hereditary chief." They wanted to know who Alfred was marrying. His father, in his usual diplomatic manner, paused for a moment and replied in their language. Translated, he said the following: "It is said that the woman is a relative of the Queen." The women, without verbal response, turned and walked away, and Alfred's choice in a bride was never again raised by the women of the village. Joan's story was that in the early 1960s, when it was clear to her mother, Dorothy, that Joan would be marrying Alfred, whom Dorothy liked very much, by the way, she paused and reflected, "Oh, well, you always enjoyed camping anyways." According to Joan, it's been a wonderful trip. His parents shown here, seen here in a trip to Hawaii, were always very influential in his upbringing and his determination, but also in his eagerness to work hard. With less than 2 years' practice under his belt, Alfred beat out many more experienced candidates for the position of first full-time city prosecutor for New Westminster, a job he had expected to hold for the rest of his life. But in 1967, Ottawa called inquiring about Alfred's interest in an assignment to Guyana on the Amerindian Lands Commission. Alfred accepted the assignment, staying 2 years. Upon returning to BC, he took on the chairmanship of the Board of Review for the Workers' Compensation Board, and a short time later applied to the provincial government for a judicial appointment. Alfred recounted the following story. September 13th, 1971, I took my dog, Cindy, who they brought back from Guyana, by the way, sailing in English Bay. He recalled, when we came home, my wife leaned out the window and said, "Hi, Judge." I thought she was kidding around, he said. "No," she said, "I heard it on the radio." It was news. Alfred Scow was the first Aboriginal person in BC and in Canada to be appointed as a legally trained judge. Alfred held the post until 1992. His subsequent roles have included membership in the Camano Completion Project Commission and work on behalf of several First Nations. He also served as a representative for the Provincial Minister of Indian Affairs, as well as a facilitator for the department. Retired for many years, Alfred continued to serve the Aboriginal and the UBC communities. He was founding member and president of the Canadian Indian Lawyers Association. He was also an elected member of the Board of Management of the UBC Alumni Association and of the UBC Senate. He and Joan established a bursary fund with the provincial court judges for needy law students at UBC and the University of Victoria, which bursaries are still provided today. If that wasn't enough, Alfred was also a member of the Management Council for UBC's First Nation House of Learning and a lifetime member of the Vancouver Aboriginal Friendship Society, of which he was founding president. In fact, a gymnasium at the Friendship Center has been dedicated in his name. Alfred has been awarded many awards, and among them are a Canada 125 Medal, a National Aboriginal Achievement Award, and UBC's Great Trekker Award. He is also recipient of the Order of British Columbia, as well as being a member of the Order of Canada, seen here receiving his honor from then Governor General Adrian Clarkson. In 1997, Alfred was awarded an honorary Doctor of Laws degree from UBC, and I was one of the many students in that graduating class. What I recall most vividly was his advice to we students. He said, "There's no substitute for hard work and preparation of your files. Be as ready as you can be," he said. As Duncan referred to earlier, he is also the founding president of the Scow Institute for Communicating Information on Aboriginal Issues. When I was a second-year law student at UBC in the spring of 1996, Alfred called the school about arranging a meeting with the Aboriginal law students. When he attended at the law school, he came with a simple message: "I want help to address the misinformation in the media about Aboriginal peoples and the issues that affect them." Those of us that attended that meeting wrote out our names and contact information, and within a week, we received a robust package in the mail. From there, he and I and others interested in the cause began meeting about what we would do and what we ought to call our future organization. Those of us who would soon be the inaugural board members happened to meet without Alfred present. We thought about the name of our organization, and without Alfred there to disagree, we decided to name our organization the Scow Institute. Alfred and Joan, while happily surprised, did not ask that we change the name. We were all in agreement the name was most fitting. In keeping with the usual approach to finding a way to get the job done, Alfred led an eager group of 7. We chipped in $100 each to buy fax, paper, stamps, anything we needed to get our message out. We completed our mission, and we sought charitable tax status. We incorporated in 2001 with donated legal services, hunted up by Alfred, of course. When we began sending out letters for financial support, we soon received word of funding from the Law Foundation, Fan City, and the Notary Foundation, as well as donations from private individuals. So far, most of us in this room would be exhausted to think there could be possibly more to fit in. Well, Alfred did. His book, Secret of the Dance, published in 2006, and he's seen here in one of the designs in the book, tells a story of when he was 9 years old. He witnessed for the first time his father dance in a potlatch, a dance, among others, prohibited at that time by the Indian Act. At this point in the presentation, it should not come as a surprise that his book was a nominee for the 2007 Aboriginal Children's Book of the Year Award and selected as one of the 2007 Best Books for Kids and Teens by the Canadian Children's Book Centre. There was no question that Alfred, along with his lovely wife Joan, has contributed an enormous amount to Canadian society. He is a real hero for all Aboriginal peoples, as well as for all Canadians. Now, that sage advice he gave in 1997 at the convocation in 1997, work hard, be ready, is still his trademark. Joan, Alfred, and I go out to celebrate his birthday every year. For his 83rd birthday lunch, knowing I would be here to speak today, I asked him, what advice would you give to an Aboriginal lawyer considering the bench? He replied quickly, I would say, don't stop until you get it, and do the best job that you can when you get there. In conclusion, we are gathered today to hear about inspiring and successful stories of Aboriginal people in the legal profession. There is no other person that I personally could think of as signifying the highest level of inspiration and the greatest of successes in the Canadian legal profession. Not only as a student, as a husband, as a lawyer, a judge, an award-winning Canadian, a writer-author, but also a mentor, who, without regard for the comforts of retirement, moved many more of us to the calling of doing that little bit extra for the good of our profession, for Aboriginal peoples, and for all of Canadian society. Please join me in acknowledging a true inspiration, Judge Alfred Scow and his lovely wife, Joan.
I have been asked to say a few words. I will try to make it that. First of all, I wish to thank the Law Society for initiating this wonderful gathering, and particularly I want to thank Dr. Tina Dion, who has done